the Democrats have done to the be-all and end-all, that's when you run into problems. So if you look on our website at fairtest.org, the proposals that we have for Massachusetts Home Care Plan, or for Chicago, when Arnie Duncan was the head of the schools there, the alternative plans that many parent groups endorsed included some level of standardized testing as a baseline, but it's not the be-all and end-all.
So we need to take it out of politics. We need to take the politics out. And let's get down to what the Florida Chamber of Commerce, because, you know, we have a governor now who wants to create 700,000 jobs in 7 years. It's almost biblical, isn't it? Yeah. 7 years. I'm going to go there, but I want to be sure that we have 700,000 Floridians to fill those jobs. So what do we need to do? And I'm not going to start with you, Barney. I know you think I am, but I'm not. I'm not going to start with the voice of business. I want to hear from Arlene. We want to have all of our children to be able to be gainfully employed. I have a stepdaughter who has developmental disabilities, and I know that the worst nightmare for any parent who has a child who will be dependent for the rest of their life is what happens to the child when you're gone. And there's nothing better than to see, like Publix, for example. Publix really goes out as activists in employing people with developmental disabilities. And that's a whole range from, as you said, I mean, it's so broad. But what do you think that we can do in our curriculum to help target those children who may need a little extra help so that they become gainfully employed and part of that 700,000 jobs that are coming down the road?
Okay. Speaking to the developmental disability population, I think depending on the individual and if they're capable of doing some form of employment, they should be brought into the vocational program. At the same time, typical children are. I think that that's something that's been overlooked greatly. I think supported employment needs to be promoted much further. I think that we need to have we need to let these individuals be put through some type of an internship in the economy. We need to encourage local businesses, and it doesn't have to just be Publix. And that's because
have you ever heard, and I want to get your opinion quickly, have you ever heard of some school districts that are, that instead of going all the way to 12th grade, that some students at 10th grade want to be able to get jobs, want to be able to be in training, want to be interns, and is this something that you would promote, Mr. Bishop? In other words, some students becoming apprentices in electrical, going out with the unions and beginning to work, knowing enough about school that we could give them a diploma, but having them earn the rest of the 2 years rather than in school reading Shakespeare, but to be able to fix air conditioning and take care of our plumbing and other essential things.
Sure, let's talk about that for a moment, because 60% in the statistic is 70%, so let's take 70% of the students aren't going to graduate from high school in the state of Florida. And why don't they? Whatever that number is, it's a significant number. And those students, either they've got a car, they're tired of school, they want to do something else. So there has to, that's one reason why AIF has supported both a college-ready high school diploma and a career-ready high school diploma. Because the person that decides not to go on and go into a career academy, for example, and there's some outstanding ones around this state, those kids may eventually not just be a plumber, they may eventually own a plumbing company. And then somebody else, then they hire other people. But let me just add one other thing. As much as we're talking about hard skills, let's not forget the fact that we need soft skills too. What do I mean by that? I mean that we want employees that are going to show up to work on time, be properly dressed, and be willing to socialize with other people at the workplace. So to the extent that children are simply socializing by being on a computer, that's not socializing with other people. We need students to be playing in the neighborhood again and academics don't do it, we're going to have to look to the schools to help us in that regard.
That's a good point, Dr. Brown.
Thank you.
One of those interesting projects that I've had anything to do with in the last 3 or 4 years is being run by a woman in Battle Creek, Michigan named Cindy Fatal. Cindy's not an educator, but she looked at downtown Battle Creek and she saw all the boarded stores and so forth. And she did a great deal of research into Michigan law and discovered that there was considerably more flexibility than anybody had assumed. And she's put together for downtown Battle Creek a series of stations, of educational stations. The key to it, the single greatest key to it, was her success in getting the legislature to abolish the mandatory seat time requirement. And it created a level of flexibility that she's been exploiting for 3 years, and she's barely begun to exploit it. It just opens up every kind of opportunity if you don't have to have those kids in their seats for 5 hours a day, facing
James Kidd, who runs South Tech, does an outstanding job in running
Do you all know South Tech, Jim
Career
Kidd?
Academy, and that's should be a model. In my school, I do not have service academy, but we work together in conjunction with Job Corps out of Kentucky and Miami, and we found out a lot of our students that qualify through that purpose, and then the rest of the time we seek ourselves to position them into places where they can learn and get a discipline. The other day I was traveling on the Florida Turnpike, and as I was approaching one of the booths, and then I heard my name being called, Mr. Bernadette, you should have come to my gate. I would have let you go for free. That was one of my students.
All right, listen, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. We're going to close with one question to each panelist, and then we're going to move on to our second panel. And the question concerns something that is dear to me, because I think that we do need reforms, but I think the reforms that we need, some of which we heard today with regard to the FCAT and with regard to seat time. So I'm going to start with you, Mr. Schaefer. If you were chosen by Governor Scott to advise him on what are the 3 most important things to change, because we talk about these changes and reforms, 3 most important reforms or changes, and I'm going to limit it to one. One, Mr. Schaefer, I'm sorry, this is it. One change to our, not 3, one change to Florida's education system, what would that be?
Scrap the high-stakes FCAT and the related phony, cynical, politically manipulated system.
For us, it would be let the dollars follow the student. Wherever the student wants to go, give them a choice, that competition.
In special education, I think we need to make sure that there's no cuts to funding for that particular part of public education. We need that desperately for the families that are not getting served outside school. That's a very special need, and it needs to be met.
Thank you.
I would wrong.
Scrap the FCATs, all right.
And for my part, I would suggest that we have a newcomer school which encompasses the students that are coming in from different backgrounds and give them a longer period of time to complete those high school requirements.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I've got questions, and we look at them again in the second panel. And I want a big round of applause for the first panel. Ladies and gentlemen, while we wait for the second panel to come up, and I know that folks in Tallahassee are listening to us, I'd like to see some legislation.